school. And also thanks to the speakers who now in many parts of the world, Ronald Lukens from USA, Sari Hanafi from Lebanon, and then Weng from Edinburgh, Peng from China, and I think one more speaker, yeah, Ibrahim Aslandur, yeah. Okay, yep, hi. Yeah, this session is a plenary session as part of the whole program of what we commonly said as International Conference of Islamic Studies. So we are trying to develop or upgrade the information, and we try to strengthen students' competence, and we share ideas about how Islamic studies can be approached, yeah, from a variety of perspective. Before I let the speakers present his ideas, I would like to introduce all speakers here. Number one is Ronald Lukens-Bull. He will going to present on Religion, Science, and Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, Insight from Indonesian Islamic Higher Education. Professor Bull is a professor of Anthropology and Religious Studies at University of North Florida. He graduated from Arizona State University doing Ph.D. and before that also at the same university, and he conducted undergraduate in Seattle Pacific University. Yeah. Thank you for joining our conference, Pak Ronald. And Pak Ronald also traveled in many parts of Indonesia, in Java particularly. Yeah. So he's familiar with Indonesian culture. The second one, Professor Sari Hanafi, he is going to talk about relationship between science and religion. Professor Sari is a professor of sociology. He also director of the Center for Arab and Middle Eastern Studies and chair of the Islamic Studies program at the American University of Beirut. He did a PhD in sociology in École de Haute Étude en Sciences Sociales à Paris, School for Advanced Studies in Social Sciences, doing master in University of Strasbourg, doing undergraduate in two universities. Yeah. It is surprised that you finish civil engineering in Damascus University. Yeah. Also beside the sociology at the same university. And then number three, Dr. Weng. He is going to talk about multicultural and right-wing Islamism, the politics of Islam and ethnicity in contemporary Malaysia. His expertise is on ethnicity, religion, middle classes, urban studies, social media, transnational studies, cultural politics, Muslim societies in Malaysia and Indonesia. He did a doctoral program at Australian National University. He did a master degree at University Kebangsaan Malaysia and also did undergraduate at University Technology Malaysia. But it's surprised also that you did computer science, Weng. Yeah, I never thought that. And then Feng, thanks for joining us. It's a little bit sudden, yeah, Pak Feng, yeah, because Prof. Arif Jamhari told me that he will have cooperation between Win Jakarta and your institution, and suddenly Prof. JM has idea, why don't we invite Feng to to introduce his ideas, and we can follow your ideas up later on. Pak Li Pei-Feng is an acting curator of Cheng He Museum at Malacca, Malaysia. Yeah, he did Bachelor of Economics, yeah, and then jumped to Master on Buddhism Studies, and then he is now doing Ph.D. at Unusia Jakarta, ya, Pak Li Pei-Feng, ya. And if I see this here, another speaker, I think Ibrahim Aslandur, I haven't got your information about you, and you can later on introduce yourself, I'm sorry. And we can start from Professor Ronald Lukens-Bull. He is going to talk about religion, science, and sustainable development goals, insight from Indonesian Islamic higher education. It is very interesting topic. And okay, I think I give you time. It's about 20 minutes, yeah. And then next speaker until the last one, and then we can make a Q&A. Okay, please, Pak Professor Ronald, time is yours. Oh, maybe Prof. Ronald is not connected yet, or maybe disconnected, yeah. What about if I let Professor Sari to start this discussion? Professor Sari?
Yes. I can start.
Okay, you can start for the first speaker, please.
I need just one minute.
Okay.
1 second, and I will be with you. Yeah. Okay. So, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to talk. This is now. I hope you see me.
Any problem, Professor Sari? Okay, it seems that there is connection problem, yeah? Test. Okay.
Sorry. Hello. Do you hear me?
Please continue. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm inspiring by my book, Studying Islam in the Arab World, the rupture between religion and social science. So if you like, this book started from observing that there is two different elite formations in the Arab world. Those who are religious and those who are secularists. And the polarization is a very deep because the secularists they adopt French style secularism where it become like anti-clericalism. And I would say the whole book I have it's a kind of a reflection of things you are interested in this in this panel about the relationship between religion and science. So, if you like, secularists think that we understand our society by separating the secular from the religious. The religious is in charge um, birth, death, maybe marriage, maximum, uh, and the secular is in charge of everything, and and he mean by and they mean by everything. It means the social, the economic, the political. This is how they conceive, if you like, um, religion. How they conceive the secular. Uh, uh, there is other elite where they think that Islam is a dinun wa dunya, is the religion can explain everything. You will be in good religiosity. It means society is good. So if you like, religion is explaining everything. What I argue in this book that in fact uh, any issue we may study, whether related to social science or to medicine, like let's talk about COVID-19, has always an ethical component. And every time you talk about ethics, it means that religion will intervene. But not only the religion, if you like, we think in terms of moral philosophy. I mean, so let me give an example. COVID-19. Uh, is COVID-19, what is the ethical dimension in COVID-19? Should we leave people uh, at home, not to increase contamination, but they will starve for starving because they are not working? And this is the situation of lower middle class. Or should we let people work so we increase the contamination, but in the same time, nobody will starve? So this is an ethical dilemma. And by ethical dilemma, you need to reflect on how religion think about equality in society. So, uh, so this is what I mean that when we study any problem, there is a component where religion may intervene, and in addition of medicine, because the medicine will tell us how many people probably will be died by starving versus those who will be died by the COVID-19 disease. So all this science should work together to reach a conclusion, a policy, public policy. So if you like, I criticize Islamization of knowledge paradigm that, as you know, started from Global IT, International Islamic Institute of Thought in Washington, and IUM become the laboratory for this Islamization of knowledge. And I propose instead another approach. It's called, uh, uh, um, if you like, uh, it, it, um, it's called separation, connection, and the pluralistic action. So today, in the few minutes we'll have, I will explain this approach. What I mean by separation, connection, and pluralistic action. It means that any problem we raise, we think about it, should first discuss in each discipline in a separate way, respecting the destiny of each science, without this kind of idea that, in fact, because a unicity of uh, of uh, uh, of Creator God, Azza wa Jal, unicity of the universe, and then there is an unicity of the destiny. I don't believe on that. I think we need to respect the destiny of each side. So we study uh, 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 separate each problem uh, uh, and we see which discipline intervene. I give example. One would like to study whether it's better to have primary schools mixed, co-education, gender mixed, or not. This is an issue. Some, for instance, according to some of theories of Islamization of knowledge, the fact that there is uh, uh, instruction from the fiqh clearly that mixity is not good, so we don't study this. I said no. We need to study this. We need to intervene psychology and education. They work according to their methodology, to their episteme, to study whether it's better that in the primary school or secondary school, it's better to have man and woman or boy and girls together or not. What would be the performance if they are mixed, if they are not mixed, comparing schools, etc. What the impact on social on psychological maturity of this pupils. Um, and then the fuqaha may see whether there is a clear-cut instruction from the Quran al-Kareem and Hadith and the Islamic heritage that we can innovate or not innovate. I mean by innovate, ijtihad. Can we say, look, we will leave it to the context, or is it really clear cut, like banning al-khamr, the alcohol? So they will study according to their own episteme, using the episteme of studying Hadith history, the Quranic interpretation, etc. So this is the level of separation. And then it will be the connection. And by connection, I mean that we need to take all the input from different disciplines and connect them, taking into account what is the worldview of a society. However, after reading a few books on Islamic worldview, I realized that in fact we put too much things in Islamic worldview, and it become like a lot of fixing things to the things are they are there. So yeah. So based on that, so sorry, I need 1 minute. Okay. So 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 based so based on that, I use a more phenomenological word is life words. Considering Islam how it remains in society, not as fiqhi instructions and standards, but as fundamental things and as a praxis, if you like, as a praxis. So this is why Gers, when he wrote his book Islam in Morocco, Islam in Indonesia, realized that in fact Islamic worldview in Indonesia is a very different from Islamic worldview in Morocco. Despite both countries, they consider themselves Islamic countries, influenced by Islamic countries. So the connection will take into account the society. Is it a tribal? Is it a rural society? Is it a urban society? What the meaning of the mixity? Whether the mixity will create a social riot or not? Is it how? So all this is will play a role in the level of the connection. Uh, Once we connect and we bring, we say, look, taking into account the input of psychology and sociology and religion, on mixity in the school, we we argue that it's better to have mixity. For instance, I hypothetically. So in that case, we move to the third level, what I call multiple praxis or multiple actions. It means that, uh, uh, if you like, the state will think about what the meaning of have a pluralistic society. And the fact that they have a pluralistic society, the state, it means that they will take into account that they should not impose, if you like, any religious instruction if you would not like to be religious, or because they have Buddhists, you have Christians, you have the Jews, you have etc. So, so the state will only apply the connection, what the outcome, as far, if you like, there is uh, 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 no theological instruction, instruction inside, or what I say, I mean, reasoning that go beyond the theological one, or that there is no harm from the other. If there is no harm from the other, it should not be imposed the mixing, the non-mixing. However, the preacher or dai, the advocate for Islamic piety, may say, look, I read the conclusion. I read that you prefer, I mean, for the kids, it's better to have a mixity, but I'm still thinking that uh, uh, Muslim community should go to school which is not mixed. In that case, he has the right to do this and to go to the mosque and to advocate for this. So, if you like, the multiple action take into account that always we will have an action toward we will have action for citizens and action for believer. Okay, uh, for citizen, the state decide, and the institution, parliament, and see, something like that. Uh, the the da'i will decide according to what he we think that the connection should be otherwise, and they think that there is a clear-cut instruction from Islam to have a mixing. So I think this methodology, what I call it, separation, connection, and multiple action, which I see how to connect in a healthy way religion with with science. Otherwise, uh, we don't want hegemony of science over religion without respecting relative uh, uh, autonomy of religious institutions, and not the, and neither the opposite. It means that the religious institution will impose, if you like, on non-religious, or on those who are in other religion, something dear to their theology. And I think if we look to the history, Islamic history, the time where you have tolerance, uh, we find fuqaha made a lot of things in this direction. Just to give you an example, while it said it's strictly prohibited in Islam to drink alcohol, uh, uh, fuqaha accepted that if you are married with a Christian woman, and this Christian woman uh, uh, can drink alcohol for her according to her religion, you cannot, or her culture, you cannot uh, refuse to her to drink alcohol at home, while it's strictly prohibited for you as a Muslim. to drink alcohol, you cannot enforce this in your wife. So at home. So it means that at home you can have an alcohol for your wife, but at the same time you cannot drink. I don't know how much I have time, but I mean this is really the main argument I would like to advance, if you like.
You have 3
That
minutes more.
that sorry.
3 minutes more.
Yeah. So if you like, this is why for me today it's a very important to understand the input of religion as ethical deliberation and ethical reasoning. It means that when I say ethical reasoning, it means that this should be taken into account what is the tradition, but at the same time, you need to look how people they make moral reasoning, taking into account the consequentialism that if we do this, this is with me the consequence. If we do that, there will be another uh, uh, um, consequence. So ethics, if you like, is not only virtues. It's not when uh, some Muslim scholar simplify it to say, look, ethics is clear, is a verb. No, I mean, most of deliberation we take every day and in our everyday life, it's really, it's a much more complex that the virtue advocate by Islam, whether the credibility, to be courageous, uh, uh, if you like, the basic, to be kind, to be generous, uh, to take care of elderly people, of your kids, etc. Beyond all these virtues, I mean, often issue social phenomenon is take into account. You need the input of social science. This is why in many universities in the West they teach practical theology. Why practical theology? Because there is no fixed theology. It's not licit and illicit, halal and haram. You need really to see how people will perceive an action. Also, in the Islamic history, we have this idea that application of an instruction can be gradual. So gradual because you want to see what is the consequences of something if I apply in society. Uh, and imagine today we live in a very diverse society. I grew up in Syria, where I do remember we have three sheikh, sheikhs who really, I mean, every Muslim belong to this two, three sheikh. If you like in Indonesia, between Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. So people either here or there. But now, if you like, talking about Syria, a country I know, I grew up, I spent quarter of century there. And I see my kids, they are so much influenced by so much influence, so much input from globalized world. And this is why I need to respect their moral reason, and not to say according to X or Y, things are clear, and there is one way of applying this moral reasoning, and this is the verb. So I think we are in this dilemma today that I hope we can overcome overcome it and think about it. And I am here for the Q&A when it's needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You can give applause to him. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Hanafi. It's very interesting to discuss how religion and science try to have a connection, and in Islam, I think many scholars also have serious concern on that. Yeah, and I'm happy that you visited Indonesia and you also observe some social structure of Indonesia. And when you said here we have Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, for example, as a part of important civil society. And thank you very much. And next, I will give opportunity to Professor Ronald to give presentation. And I think it's very have a good relation with this presentation, because Professor Ronald will try to elaborate how Indonesian Islamic universities try to integrate with between religion and science, and many programs in UIN nowadays also have concern on that. Okay, Professor Ronald, please, time is yours. You have 20 minutes.
Okay, I've just sent a request to share the screen from my computer as opposed to my iPad. My iPad is slow. Okay. It looks like, okay, great. All right, let me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I'm very happy to participate in this. I'm a little sad that it cannot be in person. The research that this is based on was conducted while I was a Fulbright scholar at what was still IAIN Sumatera. Now, Win, that's one of the co-hosts, and I'm very pleased to be able to participate, although I miss Medan and its wonderful food. I'll look at pictures at it later, and we'll call it a whole digital experience. So certainly the committee knows that I've conducted and I've published and work on Islamic higher education, and I've been doing research on Islamic education for the past 33 years, and want to apply some of those insights to thinking about sustainable development goals. When EIN started to transition from being exclusively institutions for religious studies to full-fledged universities starting at the beginning of the 21st century, and this is a process that's ongoing, they had to add at least 2 non-religion faculties, and so this, in every campus, as part of the process, even before doing this, is engage in a dialogue and a debate about the relationship between religion and science. I think bringing sustainability goals into this also helps us think about the relationship in a more holistic way. And I think that even as our first speaker suggested, Indonesia has relevance to the global discourse because it is a multicultural, multi-religious, and the religious differences are not just Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, even with Islam, but there are significant Christian populations, significant and famous Hindu populations, and so this allows us to think about how these things might work on a larger scale across the world. Okay. I'm trying to advance my slide, but it's not working. Okay. So the particular sustainable development goals that sort of are relevant to this are quality education, gender equality, climate action, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And I'm going to come back to those and talk about um, how those are specifically sort of tied to Islamic education and the ways in which Islamic education can contribute to those goals. Now, in general, in thinking about the relationship between religion and science, which is important in thinking about how to set up an Islamic education that engages the social development goals, we've got a couple of important thinkers. We've got Said Hossein Nasser and Osmar Bakar, who have very sophisticated understandings of the relationship between religion and science. And if I may oversimplify them, it comes down to the Sufi idea of Tawheed as a foundation for society. The the unity of God. There is no God, but in a Sufi sense, there is nothing but God. And so if there is not since God is the source of all knowledge, there is no separation between science and understanding God. God is in everything science can study. Now, historically, there has always been in Islam a distinction between what I call ilmu sarambi and ilmu dalam masjid. Those things that can be taught inside the masjid and those things that have to be taught on the veranda or on the sarambi. But still seeing a unifying sense that to knowledge is an important way of integrating and advancing sustainable development goals through education. Also the application of to ethics, to sustainability ethics, and other things, because the big thing that makes the difference, as sort of one might say, or the contribution of religion to science. Science asks the question, can we do this? And it takes some ethical system, whether it's religion or philosophy, to ask, should we do this? And, can we do this led us to nuclear weapons? Can we do this leads us to lots of problems in our world. Can we mine tin? Can we mine coal? Can we do these things? These are scientific questions. But asking what can we do without asking what should we do has led to problems. I think another important figure in Indonesia, although his influence has been challenged and re-questioned, is Harun Nasution, his sort of what's called a neo-Mutazilite approach, and trying to open a dialogue between science and religion. It is the model that both Weng Jakarta and Weng Yogyakarta were founded on. Now, you cannot say that they are just, continuing Nasution's agenda. but certainly they start from there. And this idea that you can have a dialogical integration um, supports sustainable development goals through the ethical application of science, as we suggested, but also it is critical in a foundation for developing the win system. So thinking about particular ways in which uh, we can link religion and science to the sustainable development goals, specifically in terms of Islamic education, the one that tops my head is, and it's number 2 here, is gender equity. And what's interesting about issues in gender equity is in the 1990s, when I was doing my research on Islamic education in Indonesia, I was also doing reading about Islamic education in other parts of the world. And the country that had the highest female illiteracy rate, so buta huruf perempuan, at 25% was Turkey, the then very secular Turkey. Not Iran at 6%, not any of the Muslim country, the countries that people might think of, but it was Turkey. Why did Turkey have such a high rate of female illiteracy? They've gone back and they've fixed it, but they did not fix it necessarily by addressing the original problem. But the original problem is that the Turkish government did not allow the kind of integration of secular or government recognized curriculum and Islamic schools. Indonesia has allowed this and encouraged this. There's a similar problem today in rural Thailand, where the schools, the government schools can't get out to all the rural areas, and the monastery, the Buddhist schools are traditionally just for boys to become monks. The problem is, and this isn't a Muslim issue, this is a religion issue or a religious parents issue, is that parents are sometimes nervous about sending their daughters to school that do not have a strong religious foundation. So integrating general education, science education, secular education, whatever you want to call it, with religious education, and then opening that up for girls means that women are able to get an education that they otherwise may not get because of the concerns of trying to sort of protect them and wanting them to be in a attentive, protective, religious environment. In the education goal and quality education, again, I think quality education has to include a certain amount of critical thinking and a critical thinking about ethics. What should we do? About building partnerships. Again, collaborations between religious institutions, governments, and sciences. And that's just, in a sense, that is the very model of the contemporary win, is that's what it is. It is a collaboration between these different actors. and we've sort of already um, talked about then the expanding of the faculties in science, technology, and health science, and then linking research to Islamic ethics, and then this can be, because then taking care of the environment, social justice, keadilan, public health. These are all things that sort of fit within a Islamic ethical framework, and so that moves graduates or can move graduates towards work towards sustainable development goals. Um, so some of the challenges and critiques is that about the change of these institutions is they're fearing the loss of Islamic identity. And a couple of the ways that that has been dealt with is one is the Tawhid approach I've mentioned. Another is to think about what makes an Islamic university Islamic is the things taught not in the classroom, the things taught in the asrama, the pesantren, the things taught in pengajian, the things that are taught about ethics and morality, and not necessarily the things that are taught about mathematics or literature. There is a risk of superficial integration. I refer to this sometimes as ayat zasi, where people just sort of cherry pick a verse of the Quran and to support something in the research. And this is neither interesting research nor interesting interpretation of the Quran, to just find something that seems to be parallel. And so there's a need to engage in critical engagement with the secular sciences. So not just engaging in them and accepting them in, but also, and I think there needs to be better integration in the WIN between the traditional Islamic faculties and the new ones. I often question why, if Quranic ethics for medicine, it needs to be taught in the medical college, why they go and hire their own person and why they do not take a faculty member from Sharia or from Tafsir or from Usuluddin, and who all of those may work on Quranic ethics, who with a little bit of reading can take their deep knowledge of the Quran and apply it to medicine, as opposed to hiring a doctor who does a little bit of reading on Quranic ethics. And, I think there needs to be more working from within the system to cover those kinds of needs. So the path forward is to build curricula embedding these goals into Islamic higher education. Thing is there's already a connection, sort of without sort of necessary planning it. As I've pointed out, these are already deeply connected, but doing so more consciously and, integrating it into the statements of purpose, integrating it into the curriculum in a conscious way. Also encouraging interdisciplinary research teams. I think there's very interesting work that can be done involving both technology professors and traditional religion professors. One of my favorite topics to think about in this regard is the social economic impact of pilgrimage sites. And we can look at the environmental impact, the economic impact, the water sanitation impact, as well as the religious meaning. And that means that we could integrate faculty from Usuluddin, from technique, from various different, and I think that would be a good thing to do. So again, religion and science can be mutually reinforcing in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and Indonesian Islamic higher education offers a value for this and in a value-based integration in trying to do sustainable development. It's been doing it without naming it as such, so I'm just saying it needs to name it. And that is what I have. Hopefully it is of benefit, dan kalau ada yang kurang saya minta maaf sebesar-besarnya. Terima kasih.
Yeah, please applause to him. Thank you very much, Prof. Ronald, Pak Ronald. Yeah, it's very insightful and yeah, talking about Indonesian educational system is very complex. It's very complicated, and particularly when we talk about how Islam tried to play important role in this social and cultural aspect. Okay, then I will give opportunity to complete the discussion on previously on Indonesia, and then we can compare how Malaysia, yeah, as a part of the face of Muslim world, yeah, will be captured by Weng in terms of contemporary political Islam, yeah. Okay, I give opportunity for you, Weng. You have 20 minutes, please.
You still mute.
Please unmute, Weng. You still mute your audio. Test? Yes, good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, clear.
Okay. Oh, I got unmute. Okay. Okay, yeah, good afternoon or good evening. Selamat sore, selamat malam. Many thanks for giving me this opportunity to share my research. My presentation today entitled Multicultural versus Right-Wing Islamism, the Politics of Islam and Ethnicities in Contemporary Malaysia. Let me start with two quotes. First, Islam raised the level of humanity to a noble level by upholding justice and without racial and religious discrimination. This is an excerpt from a commentary article entitled Islamic Compositions as a Reinforcer of National Unity, co-written by Patricia Sham Brahari, the then Deputy President of ICRAM. ICRAM is Malaysia, ICRAM Association, a moderate inclusive Islamic organization. In 2020, a few days before the celebration of Malaysian Day, 16th September. He stated that as a religion that blesses all human and the universal, and the universe, Islam celebrates diversities and differences. Now we go to the second quote. It's a quote from a speech by the former president of ISMA, or Malaysia's Muslim Solidarity, a right-wing Islamist organization in Malaysia, and the then President Abdullah Zahid. During a talk show, he defended Asabiya Melayu, or Malay Canonism, as a struggle of ethnic Malay to protect the rights and the roles of ethnic Malay as an Islamic race in Malaysia. So he kind of mixed or conflicts Islamist ideologies with a Malay nationalist agenda, promoting a kind of Malay Muslim populism or Malay Muslim majoritarianism. Both ICRAM and ISMA are Islamist or Islamist-inspired organizations. Yet in recent years, despite sharing certain conservative Islamic agenda, the discourses have been or are diverging. The former embrace inclusivities and tolerance, and the later ISMA spreading exclusivities and intolerance. The cases mentioned above illustrate two different intersections between Islam and ethnicities, as well as two contrasting phases of political Islam in contemporary Malaysia. The former claimed Islam is against racism, yet the later used Islamic idiom to pursue a kind of racialized nativist agenda. Okay, for sure the reality is much more complex than these two configurations, but I will focus on these two today. My presentation today actually be a part of my ongoing research on Chinese Muslim identities, Muslim middle class, Islamic preaching and social media, and political Islam in Malaysia, and also a little bit on Indonesia. But I focus on Malaysia today. It's aimed to explore the politics of Islam and ethnicities, as well as how Islamist groups approach various minority groups. Malaysia is a Muslim majority country, as more of you know. About 2/3 of the population are Muslim, and has sizable Chinese minorities, about 25% Chinese and 7% Indians. Most Chinese and Indians are non-Muslim. Only 1 to 3% of any Chinese in Malaysia are Muslim, and most of them are converts. Islam has been constitutionally, politically, and culturally interwoven with Malay ethnicity in Malaysia. And over the last few years, Islam has played increasingly important roles in Malaysian politics and society. For Malay nationalists, Islam played a role as an identity marker. For Islamists, Islam functions as a political ideology. Of course, these two groups are not mutually exclusive, as there are various configurations between them. While racialized Islamic discourse are still dominant, some Muslim individuals and groups have active in promoting Islamic understanding is culturally inclusive and socially tolerant. However, such promotion of cosmopolitan or inclusive Islam is not without challenges, and it meets with various right-wing backlashes. So by looking into the discourse and activities of Ikram and Isma, I would like to examine how different Islamic organizations articulate competing agendas. Okay, this is Ikram, Malaysia as a conventional state, and Isma, as you see, focus on Islam and Melayu identities. Focus on Islam and Malay agenda in a very narrow sense. Okay, besides political Islam such as PAS, the major Islamist party in Malaysia, Amanah, a moderate Islamic party, and PKL, or Partai Keadilan Sejahtera, sorry, Keadilan Sejahtera, not PKS, I'm confused, PKL, Parti Keadilan Rakyat, sorry, or the Justice People Party, the Anwar-led Parti Keadilan. Although it's a multi-ethnic party, there are also elements of, how to call it, moderate Islamists within Anwar Ibrahim party. I'm not going to do that because it's not the focus of the discussion today. Besides this political party, Islamic organizations such as ABIM, Islamic Youth Movement of Malaysia, Ikram and Isma has been playing important role in shaping discourses and practices of political Islam in Malaysia. These three urban-based Islamist inclined organizations have in different ways and to different extents has been influenced by the ideologies of Muslim Brotherhood. So they share certain conservative viewpoints on various religious, moral, and gender issues. So they all agree with the implementation of Islamic law and also the promotion of halal or Islamic economic or Sharia finance and so on. Yet they have different approaches when dealing with issues such as nation building, multiculturalism, and attitudes toward non-Muslim in the context of Malaysia. As of today, ABIM and Ikram are pro-Pakatan Harapan or Coalition of Hope, a multi-ethnic political coalition led by the current Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. He covered endorsing multiculturalism and collaboration with non-Muslim. So in line with such position, ABIM recently promoted the agenda of cosmopolitan Islam, Islam cosmopolitan, while Ikram endorsed the vision of Negara Ramah or conventional state, both envisioning a kind of more moderate and inclusive version of political Islam. In contrast, Isma reiterates the stand to uphold Malaysia as an Islamic state and to sustain Malay supremacy or Malay cultural hegemony. Isma is also an anti-Pakatan Harapan or the current ruling government, endorsing the closure of vernacular schools and viewing non-Muslim politicians as a threat to Malay agenda. The current slogan of Isma is Melayu Sepakat, Islam Berdaulat, Malay Unity, Islamic Sovereignty, and it supports a Muslim-only electoral coalition, reflects its ultra-nationalist and exclusivist Islamic stand. I'll briefly talk about the Islamic Islam and its transformation in Malaysia. To understand the phenomena of political Islam, scholar analysis has been using various variety of term and label to understand and categorize Islamist movement, ranging from Islamism, post-Islamism, liquid Islamism, Muslim Democrat, Islamic populism, and the list go on. I'm not going to the details today, but just a brief overview. But over the decades, in different countries, many Islamist parties and movements began to adopt a more pragmatic approaches, shifting their discourse, accepting more democracy, and abandon old dreams of establishing of a classical Islamic state. So some scholars call it or understand it as a form of post-Islamism. Yes, such transformation do not necessarily mean they are totally abandoning the agenda of Islamization. As Paul Becker and Rhodes have reminded us, the boundary between Islamism and post-Islamism are fluid and interconnected. They are bounded by historical continuities and not by sharp ruptures. And more importantly, depending on different contexts, there are intensified debates among various Islamist groups on what constitutes Islamic or Islamism and how to be Islamic. Indeed, Islamist movements are dynamic and constantly evolving, engaging with ongoing process of how they define themselves over the time. This is also the same in Malaysia and I believe also in Indonesia. In the context of Malaysia, the history of Ikram and ISMA can be traced back to Jemaah Islam Malaysia, JIM, established in 1990s by Malaysian activists inspired by the ideology of Muslim Brotherhood. However, over the years, there were different opinions within JIM, leading to the split into ISMA and Ikram. The senior JIM, Jemaah Islam Malaysia leaders who later joined Ikram instead of ISMA, Megat Muhammad Amin, he recounted this experience with ISMA activists. We were friends, we joined the same Usra before. Yet we had different political opinions whether how to work with non-Muslim in Malaysia especially. So they only focused on the Malay agenda, they mean the pro-ISMA activists back then in JIM. So Megat, according to him, Islamists should work with different segments of multi-religious Malaysia, and exclusivism does not reflect the teaching of Islam. Indeed, as in today, Ikram positioned itself as an inclusive Islamic movement, while Ikram positioned itself as an inclusive Islamic movement, while ISMA is more Malay-centric. And Ikram see non-Muslim as their partner in nation building, and sometimes also even as a potential convert to Islam. In contrast, ISMA often label non-Muslim as kafir sometimes, and also even musuh Islam or enemy of Islam. So by juxtaposing Ikram inclusivities and ISMA exclusivities, moving beyond the debate of post-Islamism and Islamism, I suggest describing such contestation as a competition between moderate multicultural Islamism and right-wing extreme Islamism. Now, a bit on Ikram. Following the trend of other Islamist movements in Middle East, Ikram abandoned its ambition of establishing a classical Islamic state. Since 2014, it has been promoting a concept of Negara Rama, a compassionate state, instead of Negara Islamic state. It highlights the importance of Makai Sharia, the highest objective of Sharia, and endorse diversity by using Islamic idioms. For Ikram, the articulation of an inclusive Islam does not necessarily mean they are abandoned or totally rejected their Islamist ideologies. Instead, it demonstrates how they wish to make Islam relevant in contemporary context and to promote social inclusivity within an Islamic framework. Let me briefly introduce two Ikram initiatives in line with their vision of compassionate Islam. So they run Malaysia National Month together with the Ministry of National Unity. Ikram had co-organized the Carnival or Malaysian Day Carnival with various partnerships from various groups, be it a Chinese educationist group and a Tamil language organization. And since 2010, Hidayah Center, which is a Dawah institution under Ikram, has been also organizing Chinese New Year celebrations. as a way to show Islam and Chineseness can be compatible and can be and also to push Islam to ethnic Chinese in Malaysia subtly. So these two events manifest Islam's commitment to multiculturalism. They refer to Islamic texts to highlight the universality of Islam. Nevertheless, this support of diverse cultural appreciation of Islam might not directly lead to the greater pluralization of Islamic discourses. For example, many ICRAM members or leaders might be against racism. Some of them at the same time hold anti-LGBT and even anti-Shiism viewpoint. So there's certain limitation of their inclusivity. Anyway, now we move to ISMA. As compared to ICRAM, ISMA held an exclusive and intolerant viewpoints, especially on issues related to various minority groups in Malaysia, be it ethnic, religious, and gender minority. So while ICRAM promotes the idea of compassionate Islam, ISMA allows the slogan of Melayu Sepakat Islam Berdarat, so it's called Malay Nativist Islamist Agenda. So to restore the hegemony of Malay Muslims, ISMA actively popularized the message that Malay Muslims are insecurity, or Melayu Islam terancam, or Malay Islam is under the threat, and participate in various right-wing mobilization to defend Malay Islam or to defend Melayu Islam. ISMA has continuously accused Pakatan Harapan or the current ruling government as pro-Chinese, pro-LGBT, and pro-liberal, and the list go on. So it's also launched two controversy campaigns online. The first one is Buy Muslim First, urge Muslim consumer to prioritize Muslim-owned products and services. It reminds me of Indonesia, ada apa nama, aksi dua, not aksi 21, the Koperasi 212. So they ask Muslims to only prioritize Muslim product. And the second, urge Muslims to vote for Muslim candidates. So don't vote for kafir. Some of them, they even said this on their social media platform. A few years ago, Student Kembara, which ISMA activists run, produced this hit nationalist film Mat Kilau in Malaysia. Some of you might have watched this. The film key message is urging Malay Muslims to be united against foreigner, emphasize the role of Islam in Malay identities, and indicating that non-Muslims are not suitable to lead Muslim majority societies. So for them, the colonizer is not only the West, the British, but also they use it to refer to foreigner, in this case ethnic Indians, Chinese, and sometimes Indians in Malaysia as neo-colonizers. So indeed, they have abused and weaponized terms such as decolonizing and Islamic phobia to justify their far-right nativist and Islamist agenda. So for example, activists have published articles that compare Malay situation in Malaysia to the Jewish occupation of Palestine, a not so subtle way to protect Chinese Malaysians as invaders who have taken over the cities, and also neo-colonists who will take over the political power of in Malaysia. So when they use penjajah, it not only mean the British or the West, but also the ethnic Chinese in Malaysia also being seen as part of penjajah according to the right-wing groups. Any criticism of far-right Islamist agenda will also be labeled as Islamic phobia. So the term has been misused, just like how anti-Semitism is being abused to silence criticism towards the Zionist regime. Okay, I will not go into the details on this because I think that the time not much for me. I will just come to the conclusion part. In this paper, I have examined how two major Islamist groups in Malaysia, ICRAM and ISMA, articulate Islamic idioms to pursue diverging agenda. ICRAM sees Islam as a universal religious and ethical guidance for the anti-racism struggles. It sees non-Muslim as partner in the nation buildings. However, ISMA views Islam as a core identity of ethnic Malay and as a mobilization tools for a right-wing agenda. It sees non-Muslim as a kafir and sometimes a threat to Islam. And to this diverging understanding of Islam ethnicity coexist compete and often coincided together, and also they're shaping the political development in Malaysia. The last point, the last slide. In Malaysia and Indonesia, some exclusivist and populist forces are using Islamic idioms to promote intolerance and pursue a counter-cosmopolitan agenda in the name of quote-unquote defending Islam. However, at the same time, cosmopolitan, if not inclusive ideas and pluralist tendencies have been creatively employed by various Muslim individuals, societies, NGOs, and institutions to create a necessary context for mutual tolerance and share respect between and within different groups in the society. So be it Islam Nusantara, Islam Berkemajuan in Malaysia, and or Negara Ramah, Cosmopolitan Islam in Malaysia, Madani, I mean the current slogan by our Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, there are various attempts or efforts to promote progressive, if not moderate Islam, despite there are certain kind of limitation. Such promotion of cosmopolitan, if not inclusive Islam, to fostering inter-religious harmony and acknowledging the inter-religious diversities, I believe is aligned with one of the SDG goals on peaceful coexistence and justice. So with this note, I end my presentation today. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Ya, tepuk tangan. Thank you very much, Weng. It's very interesting, and if we compare Indonesia and Malaysia, there are many similarities here. That the issue and the terms like kafir, what is it, rahmah, yeah, and then if you compare in Indonesia, we have Islam Nusantara, Islam Berkemajuan. You introduce us negara rahmah, cosmopolitan Islam. I think it's very interesting, yeah. And okay, in front of me there are audiences from graduate student. Some of them are master and some of them are PhD students, and they're still awake to discuss after this, ya. Siapkan pertanyaan yang baik, ya. Okay, I will give opportunity for the next speaker to Mr. Weng. Are you still there? Yeah. Please, Mr. Weng is going to talk about the legacy of Chenghe, yeah, Chenghe culture, and you have already shared here with us. Conservate Chengho Cultural Road, yeah, heritage in the view of Asian maritime civilization. Please, you have 20 minutes, Mr. Weng. Are you still in mute? Could you please unmute? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. I will introduce my research and field and my work about the heritage, the view of Zhenghe, and focus on the maritime civilization of Asia, and focus on the cultural heritage based on the concept of UNESCO World Heritage. I must pay honorable to my founder, to the founder of our museum, Dr. Tan. He graduated from the University of Indonesia in the year 1965. And it's me. And I'm also the volunteer of Nahdlatul Ulama Care. And it's my professor, my supervisor, Professor Ahmed Suadi of UNISIA. I introduce, firstly, my field and my work focus on the maritime world trade before 15th century. And then you can look at, this is the different product and different commodities, road, silk, ceramic, beads, spicy, Incense route, and all in Asia. And when we look at Southeast Asia along the Maritime Asia Trade Road, we can find Malacca also is a very important hub during the before 16th century, since 15th to 16th century. And most of the country was involved in the maritime trade before 16th century, include China, Indonesia, and you can look at Sriwijaya, Champa, and also Malacca found the most important trade center after 15th century. I try to, because I work in a museum, I try to research this area in East Asia, include China and include Nusantara area, and include Indonesia and Malaysia. Along the maritime trade road, there are different products and commodities. Also, some country promote the Asian Silk Road World Heritage Serial and Translations nominations. And you can look at China lead Maritime Silk Road. Indonesia try to promote shared maritime heritage and also include Spicy Road heritage. I try to connect Maritime Silk and Spicy Road heritage together. And also, because I try to connect the different maritime trade road, I join CIIS. I join ICIIS Culture Road International Science Committee, and to promote the cooperation between different countries for maritime culture trade road. And the concept of the culture road original come from the European Council. So you can look at already there are more than 49 culture road heritage in European, and how many culture road heritage in Asia? A little. This is a timeline of the culture road of heritage since 1993 from the Spain. And most important key point, milestone year is 2008. At this year, ICIIS Quebec Culture Road Charter was published, and it was accepted by the UNESCO World Heritage. After 2008, and you can look at from several culture road heritage was submitted to the UNESCO from Mexico, South America, and in Asia, and now the last one is from Brazil. And which one is next? I hope Maritime Silk and Spicy Road for the next culture road heritage. Maybe next is Zhenghe Culture Road. This charter is very important. I researched this, the concept of the culture road. It's very important to promote and build the peace, to promote the different people living in different area for united in same world. And when I researched this, I try to introduce and connect different countries, include China, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and to promote the culture road to be World Heritage. And in this year, and I submit the paper to the ICIIS meeting in Nepal on October. I try to introduce the objection of the culture road of Asia is peace from the Asian maritime culture road to peace building. Because I live in Malacca now, and I try to research and understand the heritage concept of Zhenghe at Malacca. This is the name of Zhenghe. This is the book published in Indonesia by Compass by the founder of our museum, Dr. Dandasen. And there's relationship between Malacca and China in Ming Dynasty during the 15th centuries. I research and collect all the history resources about the Malacca. I find that Zhenghe have ever established trade basement, trade warehouse in Malacca, named Zhenghe Guanchang. Guanchang is Chinese name. Now we can translate in the basement and the warehouse. And I compare different maps from Portugal, Dutch, and British, and also collect the historic resource from China. I find that there are very important, I found in the year 1750s, a new discovery. There are Mason to General Steve Chinos in Malacca. Now, in Malaysia and Indonesia, Zhenghe was called Laksamana Zhenghe. It means General Zhenghe, Admiral Zhenghe. I find in the book, in the map of 1715s, there are, and also there are a general whale in our museum, and we can connect this whale to the general house of Chinese general house. And also I researched the relationship between Zhenghe and Islam Nusantara. I try to explain the relationship between Shamsdin and Zhenghe. This is the tomb of Shamsdin in Kunming City. Kunming is hometown of Zhenghe. And all this is Shamsdin Road. This is Shamsdin tomb in Zhenghe. Totally, there are 3 Shamsdin tombs in China. One near Xi'an City, another 2 in Kunming City. This is description of Shamsdin. This is the relationship, the genealogy of Shamsdin. Introduced the Shamsdin family and the research book in China about Shamsdin. This is the tomb of Zhenghe's father. This is the relationship between Shamsdin and Zhenghe's father. From here, we can prove Shamsdin is the 6th generation grandfather of Zhenghe. This is the Zhenghe family. And this is the exhibition in our museum to introduce Zhenghe and Islam Nusantara. I only want to say this is academic point from the Professor Salma Mulijana. He have ever been the Dean of the History Department of History in University of Indonesia around 1960 and 1970s. He is the teacher of the founder of our museum. And the Professor Salma Mulijana and the founder of our museum, Dr. and researches Zhenghe and South Asia Islam, introduced the relationship between Zhenghe and the Wali Zhengong. And Professor Salma Mulijana and Dr. Dandasen research and writes the book about this. For example, most of the history record from this book, Chronic Dunhua of Samarang and Chilbon. Now we cannot find this this resource was missing. And introduced Sunan Ampel, the relationship. Maybe Sunan Ampel and Bong Sun Ho is same one. It's only academic point. And next, I will introduce another view of Zheng He. From this view, Zheng He, I name it religion Zheng He and culture Zheng He, not history Zheng He. From this view, Zheng He have another name, Sanbao. Sanbao or Sanbao Gong. For example, we can take, for example, from two cities. One city is Semarang. When you visit Semarang of Central Java, there are very big Sanbao Gong temple. Every year, the festival, Zheng He festival, and will held on July. Now, it's also the Warisan of Indonesia. I find the historical resource about the Zheng He festival, and this kind of the historic resource was found in Semarang now, and I name it interculture. He is Wallach. Yeah, the Wallach, maybe it's the influence from Zheng He. Yeah, he is Wallach in Semarang. And in Cirebon, I name the Zheng He in Cirebon. It's the legend Zheng He or story Zheng He. And in Cirebon, you can look at this. And was supported by Keraton Kaspuhan, the late Sultan Aliyev. And we have ever held the seminar in Cirebon. All the story of Zheng He only was told in the Keraton Kaspuhan and in local Chinese temple. The local Chinese temple. Yet in the manuscript of Keraton Kaspuhan of Cirebon was written by the princess of Keraton Kaspuhan in the year 1720s. It mentioned Zheng He, Ti He is Zheng He, and also mentioned Ma Huan, the translator of Zheng He. This is a book was published in Indonesia. All this kind of ceramic in Cirebon in the Keraton was also named Zheng He ceramic by the local people. All necessary to say it is not from Zheng He. It's a Sunan Gunung Jati story. Okay, next I will introduce quickly about the heritage along the Maritime Silk Road and under UNESCO. This is also my field. The Maritime Silk Road heritage. I try to introduce Maritime Silk Road heritage program to Indonesia. And so since the year 2022 to 2024, and Cirebon, Kabupaten Cirebon joined this program, try to establish underwater archaeology program in Indonesia. And this year, I held the heritage dialogue, the heritage meeting in Cirebon and Semarang. So Semarang joined CMSR program to promote the Maritime Asia Culture Road heritage together. I think Zheng He also is the link. This is Malacca. And because I try to introduce heritage cooperation between Indonesia, Malaysia, and China, and also include the underwater archaeology. This is the shipwreck was found in Cirebon and cooperate with Indonesia Maritime and Fishery Ministry. And Cirebon and Yangjiang City make sister city. based on the underwater archaeology. This is in order to promote the cultural heritage, I submitted application to the UNESCO for the World Heritage Volunteer Camp in Malacca since the year 2023 and 2024. This is the forum of Zhenghe this year on November, cooperate between Malacca state government and our museum. And I try to promote rethinking Zhenghe and Malay civilizations to introduce the influence of the Malacca Kingdom, especially focus on the Undang-Undang Law Malacca. In my opinion, the Malacca maritime law is very important. It maybe is one of the most important key point for East Asia. So if good, I hope to invite all of you to participate in this forum on November. Yeah, it's our museum. At last, I introduced our museum. Our museum located in the Heritage Center of Malacca. This is our museum. And also there are a lot of Tempat dragon jar in our museum. I also researched this, Tempat. And I'm the curator of exhibition. I curate the Tempat dragon jar exhibition this year. And also I introduced the curate and design the full ship story. And our museum joined ICIIS. Our museum is the first maritime museum join International Congress Maritime Museum, IAMM. And I try to connect more maritime museum to work together to protect the cultural heritage. And this is my goal, Zhenghe Heritage for UNESCO. Okay, terima kasih, thank you.
Yep, tepuk tangan semua. Thank you very much, Mr. Weng. It's very impressive, and I think many of us also has interest to historical explanation on how Zhenghe explore many parts of the world, including Nusantara. Yeah, after sociological, anthropological, political, and cultural, and now, or historical now, we are going to talk about something balanced. Yeah. Ibrahim will try to balance between East and West. Okay, Mr. Ibrahim, please, time is yours. You have 20 minutes.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to Indonesia. Do you hear my voice? I just need a small feedback.
Clear.
Okay.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you for this kind invitation, and I would like to offer you some perspectives of an European Muslim intellectual. His name is Alija Izetbegovic, and I don't know if you have any translated books of him, but I couldn't find any Indonesian writings of him or Indonesian translations. But I believe his writings deserve serious consideration within the intellectual Islamic discourse, not just only in Europe, but in the Muslim world as well. So first, before I start, I want to tackle a misconception. And the misconception is that European civilization, culture, and history is white and Christian, which is not false, but it is incomplete. If you look into South Spain or South Italy here in Sicily, for instance, or if you go to the north to Scandinavian countries, you see that there are traces of Muslims living there, producing culture and knowledge. So we have a deep rooted Islamic civilization and history in Europe. And especially in Eastern Europe, you have countries that are majority Muslim countries who have a Muslim heritage for hundreds of years. And in one of these countries, in Bosnia, there is this intellectual and political leader of the Bosnian Muslims, and his name is Alija Izetbegović. He was born in 1925 in northern Bosnia, and he grew up in Sarajevo. He's originally a lawyer. He's no theologian. He didn't study Islam, but still we can consider him as a deep thinker, and a deep thinker not just in terms of Islam and Islamic tradition and primary sources, but also in Western philosophy. 1990, he founded the Party of Democratic Action, and he became the first president of Bosnia. During that time, he wrote two major books. The first one, the earlier one, is the Islamic Declaration. It's a rather small book. And in that, he gives a critical look at the state of the Muslim mind and the Muslim world and the Muslim life. And his key message in this book is that the Muslim mind has to become critical and independent. And he says that this independent and critical mind is a result of good education, of proper education. So what he is criticizing here is our conception, Muslim conception of education, is slightly wrong. We have to correct that. But in my talk, I want to focus on his major book, Islam Between East and West. And in that, he focuses on the concept of freedom and the balance between the Western world and the Eastern world. You have to keep in mind that those books and his speeches and his ideas were formed not just during the Bosnian War, but slightly before the Bosnian War. And this Bosnian War in 1990 to 95 was one of the great sufferings of European Muslims. It was the darkest chapter after the Second World War in Europe. And it is not just a Bosnian history, it is also a Muslim history, because there was a genocide going on against Muslims commanded by the Serbs 30 years ago. So you have to keep that context in mind. So let me introduce you to some to his major book, to his main book, Islam Between East and West. This book was written during the post-colonial era, a time where Muslims were torn between rejecting the West and assimilating into Western culture. And what makes his work so remarkable is his depth and critique. He's deconstructing Western thought, and he's offering a solution from the Islamic tradition. So he's offering, basically, he's saying, look, this is the Western thought and the Eastern thought, and there's a gap. And with Islam, we can overcome this gap. In his first pages, he says, this book is not theology, but it's rather an attempt to translate Islam into a language that the modern generation speaks and understands. And Muhammad al-Ghazali, the famous Egyptian scholar, writes about Izetbegović, no of the modern thinkers of Islam has developed such an original and meaningful typology that covers all major ideologies. So the core idea of Islam between East and West is easy to grasp. He says, the modern world is torn between two worldviews, materialism and religion. Materialism focuses on the external world, science, technology, and progress. Religion focuses on the inner world, the soul, ethics, and culture. So Izetbegović's main claim is that Islam offers a way to overcome this divide. He describes Islam as a principle, or as a method that unites soul and matter. If he says method, it doesn't mean scientific method, it means a way of life. So Islam can overcome materialism and the spiritual understanding of religion and combines those two. So first, Izetbegovic begins his book by asking a fundamental question. Where do humans come from? For him, it is the starting point for understanding human freedom. In the first chapter, Evolution and Creation, he contrasts the two mentioned worldviews, materialism and religion. Materialism, he argues, sees the human being as highly developed animal, a biological machine governed by instinct and chemical processes. Religion, by contrast, acknowledges our biological origin, but insists that we are more than matter. We are conscious, moral human beings capable of reflection and self-restraint. To illustrate that, Izetbegovic contrasts Darwin's theory of evolution with Michelangelo's paintings in the Sistine Chapel. Science can explain the structure of a hand, he says, but it cannot explain the creativity of an artist. So you have the hand, you can explain the structure of the hand, the connection between hand and brain, but you can't explain the creativity of a painter or of a writer who writes a poem, because poems are not just words smashed together, they are a product of the inner layers of human spirit. For Izetbegovic, the key difference between animal and human lies in freedom. Animals act out of instinct. Humans, however, can choose. We can fast despite hunger or practice celibacy despite desire. We create moral codes, ask about meaning, and offer sacrifices, not for survival, but from inner conviction. So he sees human history as the story of refusal, the refusal to be reduced to instincts. Freedom, therefore, is not a product of evolution, but a product of creation. And this, he argues, is where God enters the picture. The very fact that we are free beings points to a creator. Only God can be a source of a free, responsible being. Without this spiritual grounding, human dignity and freedom loses their foundation. The denial of freedom leads to the denial of human and ultimately to denial of God. Freedom, then, is not just a political or ethical concept. It is the very core of what it means to be human. And respecting human freedom means honoring God's creation. As the Quran says, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, we showed him the true path. And this means we gave him the true path to choose. We gave him choice. Ali Izetbegovic draws a sharp and important distinction between civilization and culture. From the moment humans began shaping tools, performing rituals, we have evolved along both material and spiritual lines. Civilization, in this view, represents the technical continuation of our evolution. It is mechanical, unconscious, and focuses on survival. Culture, by contrast, emerges from the spirit. It expresses meaning, value, and ultimately freedom. Civilization is necessary. It feeds, it shelters, it protects. But because it is rooted in need, it reflects our dependency. Culture, on the other hand, expresses choice. It is where freedom appears, in poetry, in religion, in moral codes, in aesthetics, and philosophical reflection. Izetbegovic does not reject civilization, but he insists that it must be grounded in something deeper. While civilization enabled us to produce and consume, culture challenges us to ask who we are beyond our needs. For him, civilization seeks mastery over the nature, whereas culture seeks mastery over the self. I would say this distinction also finds support in the Quran. We have this verse where Allah says, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي. We see this word takamul and itmam. Takamul means perfection, to mature, and itmam means completion, and this refers to a technical or functional finalization of a process. In other words, worldly things are completed, but human beings are matured. This has implications for how we understand education. For Izzat Begovic, information alone does not educate. We do have a ton of information. Thanks to ChatGPT and Google, we can get any information, but this doesn't lead us to be more educated. We are maybe more informed, but not educated. It can make us more efficient or productive, but it can't make us more free or more human. Learning without reflection builds civilization, but reflection, what he sees as true education, is what builds culture. But Izzat Begovic wants us that this cultural freedom is increasingly at risk. The rise of mass production, mass media, and I would add the artificial intelligence as well, does not create individuality but conformity. Mass culture tends to standardize ideas and thoughts, and that in turn opens the door for a repressive system. In a striking observation, he writes, television, back then it was television, we would say internet or AI today, has become a greater threat to freedom than the police or prison. The danger, he suggests, is no longer just political, it is civilizational. When society is run like a machine, efficient, centralized, standardized, freedom becomes difficult to sustain. The individual disappears into the collective. He argues that true civilization must grow out of culture. A civilization that severes itself from culture loses its moral compass. It produces technically competent but spiritually impoverished societies. Izzat Begovic leaves us with a challenge to resist the reduction of the human being to a consumer, a function, or a wheel in a machine. Culture rooted in thought and faith is not just a luxury of the past, it is the foundation of freedom in our age. What makes Alia Izzat Begovic's work so original is not just the critique of materialism and Marxism. His main contribution lies in placing Islam between those two poles, materialism and religion, and offering a third way to overcome this deep divide. For Izzat Begovic, Islam combines the legal tradition of the Old Testament with the spiritual message of the New Testament. Islam is not just a religion that turns away from the world. Instead, it remains deeply connected with the everyday life. Islam is a way of life that cares for both the inner soul and the social world. This idea is reflected in the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. From the very beginning, he stood between the cave of contemplation and the streets of Mecca, between personal spirituality and public action. He moved between Mecca and Medina, between revelation and political leadership. The Quran reflects this duality. It speaks not only of prayer and belief, but also of justice, economics, ethics, and law. Take Salah, prayer, for instance. In Islam, prayer is not just a spiritual act. It is also a physical act. Washing, standing, bowing, and prostrating. And it's social. Friday prayer forms the community that gathers in the mosque, a space that is not separated from life, but placed in its center. In Izzat Begovic's view, Islam is a call to both inner and outer freedom. The Quran even allows resistance, if necessary, by force against injustice and oppression. This is not a religious call to violence, but it's a political and moral position. Ethics must not become passive in the face of tyranny. This is clear, for example, in this case of zakat. It's not just a religious charity, it is a form of social duty. First, it's an ethical act of solidarity, then it becomes a public financial system, and for Izetbegovic, an Islamic society must be both highly humane, free, and highly effective. In this sense, Islamic does not list a rule, does not mean a list of rules or institutions. It is a way of looking at the world, a method, a way, a view, but not a fixed ideology. This is why the Quran is not a book of abstract ideas. It reflects the complexity of the real life, its contradictions, its tensions. It speaks of love, struggle, forgiveness, justice, the soul, and society. Let me give you some final thoughts, and then I will end, inshallah. Islam between East and West is a major contribution to the Islamic and European intellectual tradition. Izetbegovic addresses many of the key questions of his time and also of our time. He compares two ways of seeing the world. On the one side, the religious worldview. Imagine him as a monk standing on a hill looking at the city, being distanced from the real world, contemplating. And there's the second view of the villagers inside the village, inside the city, struggling from day to day, who are focused on the details of daily life. Islam brings these two perspectives together. It combines the moral vision of the monk with a practical daily struggle. Europe is still caught in this tension between body and spirit, morality and politics, culture and civilization, freedom and responsibility. Izetbegovic's answer is clear. Do not choose one and reject the other. True freedom lies in integration or in combination of both world views. And this is the historic task of Muslims today, not to reject one world in favor of the other, but to affirm the truth in both. Any ideology that claims to be Islamic, but destroys one part of human reality in order to rule with the other is not Islamic. It is misguided. Thank you.
Yeah, applause to him. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim, for your nice presentation. And I haven't mentioned your short CV here. Dr. Ibrahim Aslandur, he is a research associate at the Institute for Islamic Theology and Religious Education at the University of Education Karlsruhe in Germany, right? He earned his doctorate at the University of Tübingen, specializing in Quranic hermeneutics and educational theory, and has studied in Istanbul, Doha, and Cairo. I think it's wonderful CV, yeah. And tonight, I think there are many perspectives on discussing Islam, yeah, from sociological, anthropological, and then political, historical, and theological and civilization. And I think we have many perspectives here, and I hope you can learn many things from this session. And now it's time to Q&A. From the audience here, anyone want to give a question to the speakers? Anyone? Okay. Could you please give the microphone to... Please introduce yourself, yeah, and make a concise question. Bisa disorot, Mas Dwi? Yeah.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Faris Septian from graduate school UIN Sari Fidaratullah. I interested to respond the Hewai Weng, Pak Weng, about the Ikram and IMSA. You said that Ikram was inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Ikhwan Muslimin, and then you said that Ikram tends to be more inclusive than IMSA. My question is simple. Is Ikram inclusivity a genuine ideological transformation or merely a political strategy? To what extent can Ikram localized vision sustain both religious authenticity and political relevance in Malaysia political landscape? Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Septian. Okay, one question for Weng. I have to collect 3 persons for another speakers. Professor Ronald already left, and we have 3 or 4 speakers, and I wait for another response from you. Ladies, ibu-ibu. Pak Asep, you, yeah, I see you raise your hand. Yeah, just tell me.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Asep Gani. I want to ask question to Professor Sari Hanafi, correct? Professor Sari Hanafi make a book on knowledge production and global inequalities. How do you conceptualize the tension between local relevance and global visibility in Arab social sciences, and what structural reform are necessary for Arab universities to overcome dependency on Western academic rankings and publishing systems? Thank you.
Yep, very good question. It's a big question, I think. Anyone? Any more? Yeah, from Zoom we have Laksamana Mufli. Yeah, Laksamana Mufli. Your question is addressed to which speaker?
Thank you, Prof. Before, I think my question belongs to Professor Dr. Weng, University
Okay.
of Edinburgh. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Can I ask?
Yes, please now.
Okay. Thank you. Considering the research, how might Ikram Malaysia be understood in terms of authoritative Islam? I mean, do they represent continuity with established authority, or rather an alternative discourse of Islamic authority in Malaysia? That's what I'm going to ask. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And then Edi Kurniawan, please.
Thank you, Prof. Hamdani. Is my voice clear? Sorry.
Yes, crystal clear.
Okay, I have two questions. One is for Professor Weng, and the second one is for Professor Li Peipeng. For Weng, Article 3 of the Malaysian Constitution says that Islam is the religion of the federation, but other religion may be practiced in peace and harmony in any part of the federation. On the other hand, Malaysia is known with the diversity, religious diversity, ethnic diversity. Malay, Tionghoa, India, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Sikh, Taoism, and even animism. Coming back to the classical sociological theory, Ibn Khaldun emphasized that religious and ethnic diversity, if left unmanaged, poses a potential threat to social cohesion and may ultimately lead to the disintegration of a state. Conversely, when effectively governed, such diversity can serve as a catalyst for remarkable societal advancement and sustainable progress. Based on this, my question is, in this regard, Prof. Weng, based your experience in Malaysia, Does Malaysia's diversity strengthen social integration or create fragmentation? If your answer is strengthen the social integration, the next question emerges. How can Malaysian experience with such diversity can be example or lesson for other countries? And then the second question is for Professor Lee Pei Feng, that we know that there are various theories regarding the process of Islamization in the Nusantara, Indonesia, and Malay world, which remain the subject of academic debate to this day. Some historians argue that Islam was introduced through the traders and scholars from Arabia, particularly Hadramaut, while others emphasize to the role of India, especially Gujarat, in bringing Islamic influence to the region. In addition, there are perspectives that highlight the role of China, as you present before, especially through the interaction of Chinese Muslim trader and prominent figure such as Laksamana Cheng Ho in the 15th century. In this context, the question arises, to what extent the Laksamana Cheng Ho contributed to the early process of Islamization in Nusantara, particularly in Malacca, as you mentioned, and Java. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Edi Kurniawan. I need one more question delivered to Dr. Ibrahim. Anyone? Ada? Yeah, okay. Could you please mention your name, yeah? And please make concise question.
Yes, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I have two questions.
Your name, please, your name.
Oh, my name is Mahfud Malana. I think I have two questions, Professor Sari Hanafi. NGO, INGO, and knowledge hierarchies. You have written extensively about the role of NGO and INGO as new actor in international relations. To what extent today resolve knowledge production in the Arab world, and today risk reproducing neo-colonial hierarchies in defining research agendas. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. I thought you will deliver question to Dr. Ibrahim. Anyone? Tidak ada? Okay. Yep, I hope all of speakers already got the question. I think I allow Dr. Weng to answer the question first, and then Professor Sari Hanafi, and then Mr. Feng. Please.
Right, okay, yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Terima kasih, thank you for the questions. I think there's a few questions I try to address. Saya cuba ya, mungkin tidak sebaiknya. First, I think about Ikram and Isma, we call it Isma in Malaysia. Is that the transformation, is that just a transformation, or is just a rebranding? Is that just political strategy, or they're really sincere in what they believe? I think it's a good point and good questions, and good point to think about it as well. First, I think maybe just briefly to briefly mention, I think I mentioned that both Ikram and Isma, they are originated from JIM, Jemaah Islam Malaysia. So Jemaah Islam Malaysia is mostly combined two strains. One is the student from UK, graduates from UK, is influenced by the Islamic Brotherhood when they were in UK, and another is by those who get back from Egypt. So they come back and form JIM. And then JIM, over the years, I cut the story short. There are different opinions on political partnership, whether you want to work with non-Muslim or you work with Malay nationalism, because they know if they just work on themselves, on just Islamic sport, you cannot win the election or you cannot access more political power. So you need to work with different segments. So whether you want to work with non-Muslim or you work with Malay nationalists, and they have different ideas. So in the end, ISMA tend to work with more Malay NGO, Malay Muslim groups, and IKRAM prefer to work with to non-Muslim. So I think in that point, I think the difference is quite genuine. I think IKRAM, as is it now, I think they are committed to certain form of multicultural working with non-Muslim. Yet there are certain limitations to that. They are still influenced by Islamist ideas, so they still believe that Sharia law should be upheld. ISMA and IKRAM can work together on issue linked to, of course, with Palestine, on LGBT, on Shiism, on you name it, defending even like together defending the role of Sharia court in Malaysia, and even condemning liberal group like System Islam. So on this note, they can share similar view. But the major differences is between stand with political partners and also the attitude with non-Muslims. So on that note, there are certain kind of transformations or positioning of that group of Islamic group, but there are another positioning as well by ISMA with a more Malay Muslim group. So it's different kind of positioning of Islamic group on they differ on related issues on working with non-Muslim, but they're not changing in terms of on holding firm on their Islamist ideologies. I hope this makes sense to you. And this related to another question on the authority, whether IKRAM challenging the authoritative or Islamic authority in Malaysia. And it is also very difficult to mention. I think it depends on what constitutes Islamic authority in Malaysia, because we have state authority, then we have in the national scale, and then we have different state authorities, and then we have different government-linked Islamic institutions, and we also have a major Islamist party, not kind of now is the biggest political party in Malaysia, the past Islamist party. So they have different view, but sometimes they share certain, how to put it, they are more, I think it's the same line. I think they're more moderate, but they still do not directly challenging the Islamic authorities in the sense of they are upholding Islamic laws and also against pluralism and liberalism. For example, recently there's a discussion of fatwa against System Islam, which deemed as liberal, and IKRAM actually kind of support the fatwa against System Islam. So at that point, yeah, they are kind of affirming certain kind of Islamic authority in Malaysia. But on the other hand, IKRAM also didn't agree or disagree with using of kafir or non-Muslim. So on this note, they have a more moderate stand on not using kafir harbi. I mean, which some mufti in Pahang, I think there's or some religious authority, they say you can use kafir. On this note, IKRAM disagree on this. So I think there are certain, it depends on what issue and what topics. So I cannot, that's the key things. And then you go back to the Malaysian diversity, whether it can strengthen social integration and not. I think there are ongoing debates in Malaysia, and how, I think because different groups in Malaysia have different idea of how Malaysia should be, and we have different Islamist group, and as I mentioned, you have more moderate and more right-wing Islamist group, and with different nationalist group, and then we have more liberal and more multicultural people, and they have different way of imagining to handle. I think most people will say diversity is good, I think integration is good, but it's just the way like how we approach this diversity and how we approach this, how we want to integrate under what kind of framework. So for Islamists, maybe according to Islam, for nationalists, they want to have more role of the Malay identities and so on and so forth. So just a quick one, like let's say, for example, I think in Malaysia, we also have vernacular school, we have Chinese and Indian and Tamil school and so on and so forth. So even without, as I mentioned, like ISMA asked for the closure of the Islamic school. No, sorry, not the Islamic school, sorry, of the vernacular school, the Chinese and Tamil school, because they say Suharto, Indonesia is a good example, because, yeah, I mean, during the Suharto period, basically Chinese minority cannot exercise their cultural identities. So some Malay nationalists would think that we should follow what Indonesia have been done or New World region have been done to the ethnic Chinese in Malaysia. But that's not the case in Malaysia. So I think ISMA have said we should go that way. But IKRAM, on the other hand, we said, no, we should not do that way. We should use Chinese language as a way to da'wah, using Chinese language to non-Muslim. So they have slightly different approach on this. Although they both focus on da'wah or Islamic preaching, but in a different way. So like my own research on Chinese Muslims, so both they would like to convert Chinese to Muslim, but maybe ISMA, they say after you convert, you just become Malay, so you don't retain your Chineseness. But for IKRAM, you can convert to Islam, but you're welcome convert Islam, and you can also maintain your Chinese identities. So both ISMA, IKRAM are Islamic, but just in terms of culture, they're different way. So it's unlike Indonesian, we have like, I think the dynamic between political party and civil societies, NGOs in Malaysia is a bit different from Indonesia, because in Indonesia you have Nahdlatul Ulama Muhammadiyah versus PKS or HTI. It's kind of non-Islamist versus Islamist in some way, but in Malaysia is Islamist versus Islamist, just different strain of Islamist. Of course, we also have some liberal group or more non-Islamic group, but they are less influencer in Malaysia, put it that way. Yeah, we can discuss this later more. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Weng. It's very insightful, and you are more handsome since you stay in Edinburgh.
Camera.
Okay, and then please, Prof. Sari Hanafi, are you still there? I'm afraid, Prof. Sari.
Yeah, I will explain the
okay, then,
answer.
Mr. Feng, please.
Yeah. The original of the Islam in Southeast Asia, and because my field focus on the heritage, so the Islamic Nusantara, where is the Islamic Nusantara from? China, India, and which way? In my opinion, I focus on the trade road. I think, in my opinion, the Islam spread along the trade road. So there's a book was written by Kenneth Pomeranz. The book named "The World That Trade Created: Society, Culture, and the World Economy from the 14th century to present." So I focus on the trade road, focus on the maritime Islamic road and the spicy road, along the trade road around the whole South China Sea.
Still enthusiast actually, yeah, but the night it's no longer young, yeah. So we have to end until now. And thank you very much for all speakers, Dr. Weng, Pak Feng, Dr. Ibrahim, Professor Sari Hanafi, yeah, and Professor Ronald. I hope what we have already discussed here is very insightful, yeah, and contemplative, and we are the learner of Islamic studies trying to intersect the issue of Islam and other issue in terms of social, political, cultural things, and we are here to enrich our insight, yeah, to make Islamic studies more developed. Okay, thank you very much for all speakers and participants. Thank you for those who still stay here. Terima kasih Pak Wadir, terima kasih panitia dan teman-teman semua. Sampai ketemu besok
Terima
pagi.
kasih.
Demikian dari saya, kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam semua.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ada pengumuman dari panitia? Silakan. Bu Imas. What are we going to do tomorrow morning? Besok pagi jam berapa kumpul? Ada senam pagi? Apakah ada senam pagi? Atau jogging?